everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. Welcome. We can have the rest of our panelists come join us, please. Wow, that was so inspirational. You know, I was taking notes when Datum was talking from such a high perspective. And there's so many different little nuggets for me that were inspirational, but I think the one that might be most appropriate to start with was, he said, appreciate the opportunity. He said, paraphrased, he said, see the breadth while knowing the depth. Well, he certainly gave us such an extraordinary breadth of ideas there, talking about nation building and thinking about humanity and people connected to wealth and natural resources and building and bringing everyone along, leaving no one behind. Couldn't get any better than that. But now in our panel discussion, we're going to get into the depth. So perhaps not quite as entertaining with the jokes that Datum is able to tell. I think this is going to be informative. I'm very excited to talk to our panel, and hopefully you too will learn as much as I've already learned from talking with you in the last couple of days. Let me set this stage a little bit though for this topic, design, wellness reimagined. Today we're here to explore how design profoundly impacts our well-being, not only physically, but also mentally and emotionally. Traditionally, wellness in design was often confined to healthcare spaces or wellness facilities. And we heard Dayton talk about the wellness facilities that is definitely healthcare focused. However, especially after the COVID pandemic, our understanding has rapidly evolved. The World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. Expanded to include the psychological and ecological dimensions of the built environment, today emotional wellness is identified as an equal component of functionality. I know as architects and designers, we think of the functional first and foremost. We're going to expand that a little bit today. Our recent and underlying societal shifts have necessitated the fullest consideration and inclusion of diversity to include such conditions as neuro, disability, and gender diversity. Good design innately supports health and well-being for users, the community, and the planet. Maybe I would differ a little bit from Datum in that, yes, the planet sustainability is about human beings, but it's also our responsibility as architects, designers, as creatives to consider the resources that we take from our planet. So beyond design interest and novelty, or to be arresting and captivating, another way to say it, to be trendy, creativity delivers life-affirming and transformative possibilities. Well-designed environments fully support, soothe, and rejuvenate while delivering comfort and encouraging pleasure and vitality. They anticipate needs and wants that are large and small, quietly dispensed to intuitively accommodate life with ease and spontaneity. We're now recognizing the need to design for wellness across three critical dimensions that we're going to be discussing today as a group. Number one, it's designing for all ages, backgrounds, cultures, activities, and life contexts, putting the human experience and life functions foremost and at the center of all of our work. Number two, design impact, embracing both the potential and the profound impact that thoughtful and intentional design can create. And number three, design as a holistic endeavor, expanding health beyond the physical to include environmental, mental, and emotional well-being, as well as the planet's good health. So today, wellness by design encompasses everything from the air we breathe and the materials we touch to the way spaces foster a sense of belonging and mental peace. Addressing such design typologies as designing for self-expression in the sanctuary we call home, fostering discovery and delight and collaboration in our learning environments, encouraging creativity, joy, and escape in our places of play, supporting productivity and innovation in the workplace, encouraging commercial success in retail and hospitality, expressing contextual identity for institutions, or cultivating tranquility and healing in healthcare settings, each typology, equally essential, holds the power to enhance our well-being. So today's conversation explores how thoughtful design in every type of space can promote a holistic sense of wellness, connection, and support for people and our activities in the built environment in meaningful ways. Our panelists are pioneering new approaches to designing environments that cater to this holistic health. Today we will discuss innovations from sustainable materials to technology-driven personalization and dive into what it means to design with inclusivity, accessibility, and environmental consciousness at the forefront of everything we do. Of course, as architectural designers, we craft our environments with such core design ingredients as functionality and beauty, balance, proportion and scale, simplicity, innovation, sustainability, contextuality, emotion, storytelling. These are all the words we use all the time. How will we expand some of these for our own use and for expansion of what we do and our contributions for design impact? So today we intend for each of us to leave here with some greater understanding of wellness and design that supports, inspires, and works for all of us. So with that, let's start this panel discussion. They've already been introduced, although they need no introduction. I know everybody knows them. So, Tennyson, I'd like to start with you.
All right.
First in the alphabet by your surname. So, Tennyson, you're known for your blending of environmental branding and systems thinking, which integrates the internal with the external. So, question to you is, in your environmental branding work, and by the way, we are seeing an example of it right here today, how do you incorporate elements like natural light, vegetation, and open layouts to promote wellness and create a harmonious connection between the interior and exterior? And would you share an example where this integration has made a significant impact on user experience?
All right. To start off with, I think I'll share my personal opinion and what I think wellness is about. To me, wellness is comfort, the very first thing. Comfort, health, it has to be human-centric, driven. That's my opinion in approaching it. Us as designers, as architects, when we look into curating a space, I always find that interior designers and architects are a doctor of our line. We are always trying to understand, reading pulse of our patients, our clients, trying to understand what are the limitations, what are the restrictions that they're facing, and how do we address it and make it better at that it's visionary, that it's reaching their objective in any ways. So to give you an example, I think most of you might know, or most of you might not know. And this building, the interior is done by, it was designed by myself and also together with Gunnam. He's actually from Hapsang Land. We worked together for this project and the showroom that you're sitting at. These are actually, I would say, a greenfield type of building. It's actually, the typology of this building and this showroom is actually situated in an urban scape. And it's pretty easy to build up windows where we want to have interactions, of the internal and the external, bringing green and lighting into the space, which I think it's pretty easy to do so because it's new. It's more of a study of how a human would react into the flow of space. Whereas when the internal, when you go into the, this building where you have a atrium in the center and having a full stretch of green wall that it's exposed to the internal space as well. That's one sample. The other sample that it's pretty challenging, which is to deal with brownfield projects, which are redevelopments of old heritage buildings, or be so 30 years or 20 years buildings that are existing. So recently I've done a project which is a corporate of a revamp of a 30-year-old building. What I did was pretty much like what I mentioned, like a doctor went through client's brief with the client, understanding what do they want and reading the pulse of the building. What are the limitations, what are the restrictions that they have. So the first thing that I was briefed was making it alive. It's so lifeless, this building. It's 30 years and it's really old, there's nothing done here, and how do you make it come alive? And the second thing is to rejuvenate it, giving a purpose to the users and visitors so that they would be happy while they're working. They would want to incorporate wellness, healthy, human-centric driven concept into the whole corporate as their branding identity as well. So those are pretty much like technical stuff, and how do we do it, how do we execute it is we bring in technologies, we bring in AIs, we bring in artificial stuff like creating artificial daylights, a projection which is printed on a membrane stretch with realistically daylight into the space, having greens that reflect the external, which is open up to the open green. And that building, I forgot to mention, that building is actually in a context where there wasn't any, it was pretty tight, there wasn't any open spaces around it. It's really dark and there's lack of vegetation. So how do we bring it? We actually brought in daylights, we introduced artificial daylights, we introduced artificial sounds of waterfall, projections of waterfall and trees. I mean, so be it. Sometimes you might get feedbacks that these are not real, these are artificial, but when we are dealing with a limitation of having resources which is there in the first place, having technologies that plays a very important role in improvement of wellness and awareness to the user, where they had felt that they are in a simulation of a park while they're working, that would trigger a really healthy mindset when you're always set to work during the days. So yeah, I hope I didn't take too long of the time, and yeah.
No, thank you, that's great. Love the detail. Tennyson, I might just follow up with that and ask you specifically about brand. So how are you incorporating the branding aspects in a new way, thinking about these wellness attributes that you incorporate into your design work?
Well, branding-wise, I would say that it all depends on a client's objective and their vision. Of course, we architects and designers, we are visionaries. We see projections of how we would to be able to add value and project that into reality. Of course, those are pretty much aesthetics, I would say. But when it comes to wellness, that you would want to implement into a brand. I'll take Mercedes as an example. They are shaping, as you can see. They are shaping in a way that they are improving, not in terms of just the branding itself, not in terms of their aesthetic appearance itself, but also a system where they would prioritize the user experience in having comfort implemented into it, by having privacy, by having a great system of having a different timing of, it's not so much of a clouded showroom where you just place cars and people will walk in anytime. I mean, those are the things that we couldn't control, but they implemented a system where they have a proper way of registering a time slot where you have people come in to being attend, and you're being fully not being ignored. You're being fully attended in a way that you get the full attention. And they are adding shops in shops. Like, let's say they would have manicures while you're waiting for your car to be serviced. They would have pockets of green within space where you have a bar or a coffee, self-service coffee station where you could, while you're looking around, while you're entertaining, while you're being entertained by looking around the cars, the showrooms, you have all these aspects to be treated in a way that you have comfort into it. So these are the aspects that we'll look into when it comes to adding values to wellness into a brand.
Sounds awesome. Sounds great. Gentlemen, I have to share with you that we've had a couple of conversations, and yesterday we had dinner last night, and it was really fun. Because when this group of visionaries get going, they come up with really fantastic ways of seeing and thinking. So I'm anxious to get us rolling onto that. And so please feel free to engage, interact. If Ramesh, you disagree, please, we want to hear from you. But let's keep going. Please do, let's be interactive. I'd also like to encourage everyone else as well to please also, this is about you. We're all a big community together, so we're just sharing thoughts here that presumably will trigger additional thinking for you. Please feel free to engage with that, and we'll keep it on point. This conversation is about wellness and good design and visionary thinking and being leaders, and we're going to stay focused on that topic for today. But John, I'd like to turn to you. At your office, Thinkscape, your philosophy centers on unexpected combinations to spark innovation or to achieve unexpected results. I love that. So, by sharing one of your favorite projects that exemplifies this approach, could you share how you achieve user satisfaction by creatively incorporating contrasting scales, shapes, and movement within spaces to foster this kind of wellness and a spark of curiosity that you think gets you that unexpected result?
Okay. I'll probably put into two parts, so I won't talk too much on the approach part of it, but I will start with self. I think as a leader of the office, like everyone else here, everything starts from me, myself. Okay, before we went look at the project, since we're on a wellness topic, so I start to look into personal wellness, my health. We've been losing some close friends in the industry after COVID, and that getting a lot of awareness even for myself to look into the health and wellness of my immediate team who are going to support my studio. Probably that actually start with when we selected our new office about 2 years ago. So we decided to move out from the traditional tower office and look for somewhere really quaint, quiet, and someone that we can walk into the office and then you see green, you stuck into a 125 years old building. So we went to move into Central West, a very, very beautiful 125 years old restored building. And I fall in love with it. And then I sold the idea to my partners. And then we sold the idea to the team. And then there you go, we move into a new home. And why I say so? Because I believe that the team need to be inspired to have out of this, their mental health, the way they look at things, it need to be totally different from tower block. So from there onward, they will start to learn. When they put on an approach to design, they will know that green is important, light is important, resources is important, welfare and healthcare of the team is important. Without them, which is some of them out there, and we won't be here today. So I take that very personally. I encourage team to take leave, to take rest. So that will be the first part, to look at inwardly, who are we as a team? Who are we taking on approach on a project before we go out to talk to client? So that will be how our philosophy of things can work. Now, planning on projects, there are many Sifu and leaders here. So everyone have different approach. So I won't share my approach. Everyone have that different approach. For me, really, it's still back to take care of myself. So now we've just found out with Daniel, I enjoy diving a lot. So I took diving also, I want to specifically state it, as a job, but not hobby for me. I feel that learning new things in my life are extremely important, to look at the world, to look at world that we haven't uncovered, to look at nature, how nature presents to us, and how can I bring that into our work. So that little things have made me feel like I'm healthier. I get a lot of inspiration when I do that, and probably that's it. I think so. Yeah.
I think he shared a very good point. Having inspiration by having your job as a diver. I believe same goes to us, because me and Daniel, we are actually originally from the East Malaysia, from Sabah, where you see a lot of trees, you see a lot of plants, and we grew up with that. And that became a habit where it became my inspiration while I was designing things here, especially urbanscape. So the implementation of memories of where we have comfort or we were young, that plays a very important part as an inspiration, where we brought it to our conceptual where we develop things in a way.
Thank you. I love that he said that he had to sell his new office thinking to his employees. That's not a typical boss. So thank you for that, John. Daniel, let's hear from you. You have a passion for observing subtlety of detail. At least that's what I think I heard. Especially those inspired by nature, as Tennyson has just said, that fundamentally shape user experience. So in your projects, how do you ensure that natural elements like light and shadow, airflow and controlled ventilation, etc., enhance a space's atmosphere and impact user well-being?
Thank you, Sashi. Like John said, I'm from Sabah, and I'm a hardcore diver and I'm a runner. I think it's important to share my background, because subconsciously my background actually influenced our design. Especially now, we love to go into the ocean, because you always expect some unexpected things that actually sparks up our curiosity to keep us going, to keep us mentally healthy in our line. So I think I'm also very fortunate to have a chance to work with Kengo Kuma, a well-renowned architect in Japan. And looking at the perspective of like bringing nature into the building and connecting the city and the nature, I think we have one project that we have completed 2 years ago in Hyacentric in Kota Kinabalu. What we envision is, you see, like it's easy to say we will try to plant trees, plant anything that in the building that make the building green, but philosophically, I think it has a deeper meaning actually. Like for instance, the building that we work with, Kenguma, is right in the middle of CBD in KK. If any of you have been to KK, it's a very unique city. We have one side of ocean and the other side is the hill itself. So the city is sandwiched in between these two very beautiful elements. So what the design approach, like how do you actually bring nature right into the CBD? That is a huge task because we just don't want to plant a lot of plants in the building that then we say, oh, this is a green building. This is too superficial. So what we did is we were fortunate to the design team. So what we have done is the building itself is a metaphor of a tree. If you look at if you have a chance to go there, you have to look at the composition of the building. It's a 22-story building high. We have segmented the building into segments, like the ground level is a bamboo garden that represents the tree, the root of the tree. Then we have the guest room that actually represents the tree trunk. And then we have the top 2 floors, what we call the crown of the tree. So by saying that, when it sort of create awareness to the public that a building itself can be actually referred to be as a tree itself. So, and then once we go into the building, the ground floor itself, we have purposely set in with a row of bamboo. So when you drive past that, we don't have rows and rows and rows of a building, but hey, suddenly you drive through like a colonnade of trees. So when you go in, then the ground floor itself, the lobby is heavily cladded with vertical timbers that actually represent the forest ambience. The idea is trying to get the guests, when they go into the building, they feel like they are in Sabah. So when they progress upwards to the guest room, to the all-day dining on the top, and then the infinity pool on the top, we have been consistently allowing this transparency from both sides of the hotel, meaning that when you go up, then on the left you have big pane of glass, on the right you have glass, so you are constantly connected to the city, to the one side of the ocean and one side of the hill itself. So I think, and then once you reach to the top, which is an infinity pool, we have this infinity pool actually opens up both sides, one again towards the ocean and one again towards the sea. So I think the philosophy behind it is, if you are right in the middle of the CBD, but somehow you are connected to the greater context of the city itself, that you are connected to the nature and then you are connected to the sea, that you're aware that where you are. Because if we are designing just a normal hotel, that this hotel can be in anywhere else in the world, but for this case, it's right specifically that it can only fit in Kota Kinabalu.
That particular location.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's. I'm going to switch it out a bit. Nicely go to Nam, because I think I love that you're talking about building and site specificity. Nam, you bring a particularly interesting combination of architectural design sensitivity, but within the development side of real estate. And so, with your experience in balancing commercial value with spatial architectural experience, it's really that's invaluable. So it would be really great for us to hear from you, and for you to share with us a project where this balance was particularly challenging but rewarding. So it's a balance between value of the real estate and the architectural experience. And then how do you ensure that wellness elements are integrated without compromising the profitability?
Hi, thanks Hashi. Okay, so basically, I mean, if you look at the panel, the list of the panelists, both of them are architects, IDs, and suddenly you have this dark force, people from dark force. So actually, I like to call myself the hybrid, because I'm actually the architect and also I was an architect and also now working with a developer. So I think to start with, I think I would like to put into a very good perspective. I think myself, from the younger days, I was actually inspired by my father, which was, he was a senior draft person in an architecture firm. So actually I started to have a lot of interest in architecture when I was maybe 7 years old. So when I have this, the teacher asked me, what's your cita-cita when you are small? Then I say, I want to be an architect. So basically I started to have this passion in architecture since then. Now of course I think eventually, because he passed away, I mean my father passed away when I was 16 and I actually took study loan. So the passion actually followed me through, and I think having practiced as an architect for 6 years and then subsequently joined the developer, and I would say it's very fortunate that I joined this Hap Seng Land, where we actually, I mean, if you talk about Hap Seng Land, a lot of people thought that we sell biscuits, Hap Seng, H-U-P-S-E-N-G. So, but then what happened is when we do some remarkable building, for example, where we are here now, Menara Hap Seng 3, people start to recognize Hap Seng as a developer. Because let's say if you compare maybe 10 years back when we went for authority submission, they will ask, are you guys selling biscuit, Kilang biscuit? So we say, no, actually we are a property developer. So I think the special thing about this Menara Hap Seng 3 is basically, as a developer, I mean a lot of people think if you have a building in the city, you need to maximize the profit. But in this particular building, Menara Hap Seng 3, we actually punctured through 2 slabs, the atrium for the office tower. We actually have this concept, we call it living green wall. So we actually have a green wall that are actually living. I mean, a lot of people do external facade, green facade, you have all this green wall where you can actually have direct sunlight, you have direct water for the survival of the trees. But when you have internal green wall, there's a lot of things that you need to address. You need to address how you actually give irrigation to the water, to the plants, how you give sunlight to the plant, how you actually educate the plant to do their photosynthesis at night. Because most of the time, actually, photosynthesis is being done in the morning. But we actually have this grow light that we have to turn on for 10 hours, which consume energy, to actually maintain this survivability of these plants. So I think as a developer, we actually strike a balance that instead of maximizing the profit, we actually punctured through holes within the floor plate, and we actually have this green wall. And as most of you guys are ID and architect aware, in a normal typical floor plan, most of the bosses will occupy the corner, the perimeter of the office plate. So the people in the center is very pathetic, they don't have anything to view. We actually in the city center, we cannot see KLCC, we cannot see KL Tower. So what happened is actually we created a second dimension. We actually created a living green wall where everyone, when they arrive, when they go into the lift lobby, when you arrive at the lift lobby, you walk across this link bridge, and this link bridge you are greeted by these 2 green walls. And as a student, actually last time I always believed in architecture of 5 senses. So when you actually have all this activation of 5 senses, you tend to appreciate space more. Because you remember space by remembering the color, remembering the touch, the smell, the feel. So this type of activation of senses actually give you a better impression of the space. So this building in particular actually addressed that issue. When you walk across the bridge, you arrive in the office, and when you are leaving the office, you're actually leaving with greeting this green wall again. And this green wall, actually, you're not just looking, you can actually touch the green wall. You're actually crossing a bridge, you are within the green wall, and when you go back, you actually have this very deep impression, you have a very nice office. So of course, I think John was saying that, okay, we need an office that actually have green, and we really have an office with green in a vertical condition. It's not just on a landed where you actually have green, but this one is really a green wall. I think, I was sharing with Sashi after this event, I can actually bring her up and then we can actually have an experience of the space. And then in terms of macro context, because Menara Hap Seng 3 is just a building within, actually Hap Seng, we own these few buildings if you're aware. Hap Seng 3, Menara Hap Seng, Menara Hap Seng 2, and recently we bought this Wisma KFC where we're actually refurbishing it to be a higher centric KL. And then we also bought over the well. So eventually there are 5 buildings being linked up, and we actually think about this urban connectivity, which is again, is all about wellness, because we talk about how people can actually connect from one building to another building without need to commuting with vehicles. that's why when this building, Menara Upsing 3, when we actually near to the CPC, the Certificate of Practical Completion, we actually did a painful move, even though it was even though we need to spend, but we actually spend wisely lah. So we already hacked a hole opening on the level 1 in view that we know that eventually our boss might acquire the building next door. So we actually already moved the M&E services, everything to above floor, so that we actually free up this level 1 where it's radially connected to Higher Centric KL, which is already happening now. So we actually bought this building, and the space allowed now actually can be radially connected. So eventually there will be 5 buildings within this urban context will be connected. So that's within the urban context. So I think it's very interesting that we are talking about all this wellness, about how, I would say I'm very fortunate that I'm working with a company that actually very, very much concerned about all this creation of wellness space with a lot of wellness quality. So I think that actually set a perspective that why I think even though I'm a hybrid, I'm sitting here together with a bunch of very good designers. So I would pass back to Sashi, I think.
He separates himself out. We're glad you're part of us.
No, I'm the hybrid,
Yes,
the hybrid.
No, we're-
The dark side.
and I bet your colleagues feel much closer to you than you think. But maybe we can get a little intimate. So Ramesh, I know that you enjoy future proofing, whatever that means, you're going to tell us, with your residential work. And Nam, you talked about engaging the 5 senses, and we learn of those when we're very little. It happens at home for us. So residential design and designing for our most intimate environments, that is refuge for us, is really essential. Ramesh, how do you design for a house for it to become a home?
Thanks, Sashi. Okay, let's take a step back. Okay, I'm the biggest here, but we're going to talk about something a bit smaller. We're going to scale down a bit. Okay, so just to give you a bit of background, like YB before, I still live with my mother. Okay, so this has some bearing because I'm actually living in the same house that I've been living in since I was 5 years old. So I've been there for almost 45 years, and this house is now my office. So I literally grew up there. My brother went to study. My dad passed away. My mom stayed on. I went to study. I came back. I got married. We moved back into the house. And later on, when I started my own practice, I decided I wanted to be, because my mom was alone, my brother was not in the country, so we thought I wanted to be close to the family. I wanted to create a support system. So I decided, let's have the office within the house. And when you try to, then that got me thinking. A house is not just a building that is there to serve your needs for 5 years. And because my needs changed over the last 45 years, and I'm living in the same place, and I have to the house has to change to suit me. And you realize that a lot of houses that we live in today, and we never moved out, so I had to renovate bits and pieces here and there. And I'm sure some of you have experienced, if you try to renovate a house while living in it, it's not easy. It's not an easy task. And that got me thinking about future-proofing. So when I first set up my own practice back in 2008, I started doing a lot of small homes, not big, gigantic bungalows, but actually small terrace houses and stuff. And that's when I started injecting this idea of future-proofing. That means a house, or rather a home, you don't design a house for 5-10 years. You have to design it to last generations. And as the family grows, the needs of the family, the people in the family, the kids grow up, things will change. So if you think about it that way, a house actually evolves with you as your needs changes. So we started having designs where we design, again, nothing we did is actually new. You've heard about it before, where we design walls that can move around. We don't do brick walls, we do drywall partitions. We make sure there's a lot of, the spaces can change, because there are always issues that as a family grows, your kid might grow up, you might have 1 kid today, 5 years time you might have 3 kids. 10 years later, your kid might decide to take on music, want to play drums, and then you realize you can't get a specific room to play. And then usually the common idea is people think, hey, let's go buy a bigger house. But if you think about it, actually you don't need to. If you actually plan ahead, you can actually allow for all this to happen. And one of my first early projects was just a simple link house, intermediate link house. I think built up was only about 2,700 square feet. When the client came to see me, they were actually expecting a child. And we designed the house that it could have 3-4 bedrooms, but because budget was tight, we decided that we designed the house for what they have today, but the house could grow and add on. And so basically we designed the house for what it could be 10, 20, 30 years down the line. And actually, although I never think about wellness or that, this is actually, it's kind of related because it gives you a sense of security. You know, it's a peace of mind because you know that this house is now your home and it can actually grow with you. You don't have to think about, do I need to buy a new house? Do I need to move on to something else? But you can actually plan in such a way. I mean, in a sense, I came across this article about financial wellness. It's actually kind of related to your mental health. And even when it comes down to houses, like what the YB has mentioned before, I'm also constantly, of course, today my houses, the houses I design nowadays are much bigger. They're massive, huge bungalows, 5,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet, and so forth. But I'm still fighting with my clients to convince them to build smaller spaces. Because again, the same thing comes to kids. You want your kids to live in the house. You don't want the kids to live in their room. So these are things you can, it's a constant battle I have with some clients. Some clients see it my way, some clients don't. But if you think about it, if you build a smaller home, a smaller house footprint, it's easier to maintain. You don't have to worry about getting maids, looking after it, and then maintaining it and so forth. So, and when I first started, a lot of the houses I did were very small. And that's something I can be very proud of saying. I can actually boast to the fact that I'm actually very good at designing small spaces, but making it look a lot bigger than what it actually is. And it's actually a very few simple tricks, like, you know, opening up natural light, bringing on spaces, playing with volume, so your internal spaces feel a lot bigger than what it actually is. And actually, a lot to do with perception. If you can see from one space, like for example, for us now, we're in this room that's, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000 square feet, but it feels a lot larger because you've got windows all around and we can see the buildings across. But if you build a house with all the rooms all closed up, obviously it'll feel very small. But if you build a house that's quite open plan and you can literally see from one end to another, it feels larger. And some of my early houses were only about 1,200 square feet, 1,500 square feet terrace houses. And everyone I bring there, they'll get a shock when I tell them this house is only 1,200 square feet because it feels a lot larger. We've done houses where on the top floor, you can literally look all the way down to your living room, you can see all the way to your garden, and this works well for young families because I tell them, your kids cannot hide from you. No matter where they are in the house, you can shout for them, and you'll find them, rather than these big mansions where you can't find them. So this kind of works well with everything. But of course, at the same time, I'm sure quite a number of us grew up in small houses, link houses and stuff. And the thing is, yes, we live with our parents, and one of the issues, we talk about bringing in light, bringing in nature, but I'm sure all of us know, in Malaysia, especially if you live in the city or the suburbs, if you start to open up your house, the doors, windows, you want cross ventilation. Yes, we all know, we're all architects, we know we need cross ventilation. Yes, we know we need natural light, but there's also our Asian culture mentality. If you open up the doors, you get dust, you get creepy crawlies, you got mosquitoes and stuff coming in. So how do you do both? So that's why we started trying to work out how do you solve it. Okay, fine, mosquitoes, you got mosquito nets and all that kind of stuff, but how do you prevent dust? In my house today, and like I said, I still live with my mom, she closes all the windows because you don't want dust to come in, So one of the ways to actually filter dust and heat is actually to have a barrier of planting. Not just one potted plant. You actually need a good 2 feet, 3 feet of plants. So they're actually ways, and we have done that for some projects. So they're actually, and these are not new. They're just things that we need to put into practice. So plants don't have to be inside. Of course, it's amazing to have plants inside the house, but some people, like my wife, she hates creepy crawlies, so I can't have a plant inside the house. So we have plants, but as long as you can have it outside the house, you can see it. There's still that connectivity to it. So one of it, we have to take care of the pests and all stuff. And of course, the other bigger issue we have in Malaysia, a lot of us are concerned about is security. We want to have an open house. We like to have it open. We like to see nature and stuff. But at the same time, back our head is like, if it's too open, someone might break in. And that doesn't give you peace of mind. So that's why we started coming out with houses where we started building massive cages out of X-mat and stuff around it. But the good thing about the new meshes now, they are basically you look at it, you can't even see it. It's like a haze effect, but it gives you that sense of peace, security. That means you can.
So are you saying that a house becomes a home when it transcends just this design criteria?
Yes.
And you have a sense of comfort, security, safety, and then of course with the
You can prove it.
longevity
Yeah.
that you've described, we have memories.
Yes.
Well, then maybe we can open that up to anybody who wants to answer. Maybe you all have a thought on this, brief thoughts on how do we, all of us, take an environment, whether it's an office or it's a brand new building project, a development that is completely not intimate, completely not relatable, or a new hotel space that is completely unknown to me, or retail environment, or a branded entity. How do we breathe life into these environments where they become more than just space?
I'll start with it first. I think, yes, memories will play a very important role when it comes to incorporating insights and awareness into a space. I think awareness would play a very important role in terms of bringing memories and put yourself in one's shoes. To make it simple, I'll give you an example. Like, let's say a showroom, a Mercedes showroom, as an example. How would we approach, especially you have different typologies when you're dealing with different countries, while we're working with like places like Cambodia or even Myanmar or even Philippines. Sometimes we are tasked to oversee rural areas where, you know, access will be one thing, but they have showrooms there, you have buyers, there's demands there, then you have to execute things like this. So how would we do things like this? We have to put ourselves in a way that we are aware of the situation, we are aware of the typology, we are aware of how the user behavior when you're going into user experience. So what I will do is, usually I will put myself in one's shoes, I will test it out. I'm a user myself of one of their vehicle, to experience like the mileage, how much more you can stretch, and what kind of condition of roads or a logistic place, that how it would work well in a different climate as well. I travel a lot because my spouse is actually a Korean. I travel there quite often just to understand how a four season would work, and put myself in their perspective of how would a product would work in a showroom, which is designated at different places, so that we get insights, we gather like case studies, we gather like what do you call that, focus groups, just to understand how would they feel.
But Tennyson, so if we stay with the example of Mercedes, here we are, we can experience this. So there's the brand of the user, in this instance Mercedes, and you've got the personality. The brand is only a personality,
Exactly.
right? So we've taken a personality, we have created a home for this personality. It happens to be commercial, and the personality needs to own the space. So you're saying that you go about researching, understanding what is specific to that personality, and then how to make that space specific to the personality, which would be your brand.
Exactly, like what we mentioned, what I highlighted earlier. As architects and interior designers, we are consistently evolving. We are consistently researching for our projects that we're doing with. I think we had a conversation like last night with John. We all know that he's really good in workspace, no doubt, all hands up. And he was engaged for a project that he has never done before, a cinema. And you know, it's always about evolving and putting yourself in one's shoes and understand how would it work by experiencing it yourself. So I think wellness is not only in terms of how you would deliver your what you intend to have to the users itself, but you yourself have to understand the fundamental of what wellness is, what comfort is when you put yourself in that situation. So yeah, having memories will be one thing, like, you know, gathering memories while you're traveling to different places and experiencing it differently in different contexts. So yeah, I think putting yourself in one shoes would work that way.
I suppose what I'm beginning to hear from all of you is, while we are discussing wellness and we want to understand the attributes of wellness, and you've all done a fantastic job, or at least for me, of sharing the design criteria and how you shape it specifically for what you do, there is a softer side of wellness. So whether it's behavioral or it's psychological or emotive. And so, Nam, how do you do that with development?
I think, of course, basically, I think whenever we have a new projects, I think as one of the architects working in a developer firm, so I think most of the time, okay, can I put on the architect's cap first for this question? Because I think I would like to relate to one of the projects that I've done previously as an architect. So it was, if you are familiar with this Desa Park City International School, so I was one of the designers for that school. So I think when we think about how to design the school, we actually use a lot of our own memories. So I think because that school was a school for preschool, secondary school. So actually when we put up the thinking cap, we actually try to recall how we as a student last time, how we use the space, and we actually went to the extent of visiting some of the preschool to understand how kids actually use space, which is very different from us being adults. So they need to release the energy, they need a lot of space to run around. So that's why we actually go to spaces, and then we look at how we can put up all this bubble diagram. Actually, because with Desa Park City being a developer itself, they actually haven't done a school last time. So they also have no experience. So what we have to do is we actually put up all this bubble diagram, like what we did in uni. We put out all the bubble diagram, and then we see how we can connect the dots. So for example, I think let's say for preschool spaces, they need a lot of running space. So when we put up all the bubble diagrams, then we actually have to, there's an elongated side. So we have to create all this sequential courtyard space where these students can actually release their energy. And then we actually link up with this, back then I call it Hall of Fame. So there's a main spine that actually connect these different blocks that actually display the students' work. So when they're actually walking, they arrive at school, they look at their works, there's a sense of pride. They appreciate their work, they feel very happy, they come to school. So I think that's why for this question, I would like to put on the architect's cap. But of course, there's a developer cap. I think, for example, a few years ago, we actually did our first Hub Sing Business Park. So it's actually an industrial park, and as Hub Sing Group, we have not done industrial park before. So when we have to do something new, something that is beyond our comfort zone, so we need to actually do a lot of, we even go to those factories to see how machineries work, like cherry picker, reach truck. So eventually we have to study how all this dimension can actually create all this. That's why a lot of researches need to be done. That's why if let's say, I would think, if let's say AI came into picture back then, it would definitely facilitate a lot of our research. Because as a property developer, we have done residential, we have done offices, we have done hotels, but business park is a complete different ball game. They don't talk about aesthetic, they talk about all this maximization of space, they talk about column-free space. So that's why as a developer, we cannot be lazy, we cannot be relying on designers. As you know, designers also, they might not have done certain project. So that's why we have to actually walk the extra miles to do all this research.
I think we have
plenty want to dispute.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't trust us.
Yeah. Huh? Sorry?
No, you just can't trust us.
No, actually we trust designer. We just want to verify. It's just to verify. we know you guys doing a good job. We just do a double.
Hey, you're one of us. I'm reminding you.
Okay, I can put back my developer cap now.
No, put back your designer
So I think
cap.
a lot of researchers. That's why I think when AI comes into the picture, it might actually facilitate all this research, where we can actually do more efficient research rather than we have to go to the physical place to look at this, look at that. Maybe AI can facilitate and actually create all these. If you can create all these spaces that is actually very well designed for all these dimensions, the space will naturally become wellness. I strongly believe in that.
I'm going to add a little thing. It's not you're the stars here, but I will add something. Wearing an ID hat,
Okay.
and the ID hat is that I agree with you. Research is super important. Can't do anything without it. Understand the context, understand the client, understand the functions, understand the needs and wants, the technology, what's out there, all of that. But the ID will also say, but understand the emotion, understand what kind of environment you want to create. Understand the colors you will use, the textures you want, the sounds that would need to be created in there. And then shape that. So probably is a slightly softer thing. But I actually want to take it back to John, because John, you designed your own office, and you got buy-in from many people, and you designed a new kind of environment. So it would be interesting to hear how you imbued that environment with a sense of pride, a sense of, our datum talked about values. And surely part of wellness has to do with integrating all of that is human back into our environments that shape us. So then the values, sense of pride, the fact that your employees never want to leave you, the fact that they may want to create with you, because there are also the opportunities that your clients come to you for. John, could you talk a little bit to that as soft aspects of wellness?
Sure, Sashi. I think values, taking on from Dato YB's speech just now, are very rooted for Sarawakian like me. So we are very patriotic. So when you talk about Sarawakian, everything is about, we'll go for it. Okay, that take on another part, which design for diversity. I don't have a specific formula or answer if it is correct way to do it, but throughout my experience, every day my team face one big challenge. The challenge is design for diversity. So we have a chairman, most of our work revolving in workspace. So when we took on the brief from a senior management, generally they are the C-suite, probably they are the Generation X. And when we went to present, you present to a boomer who have one way of communication. Then when you do a change management, you talk to a bunch of Gen Y, executive, senior executive who have different dot. Then they throw you to do a change management with an executive, which is a bunch of army of the corporates, and they have different needs. And when they come back to us, study and report back to the committee, most of the time, the chairman say, I say, that's it. So we face that a lot. And it takes a lot of time for us to do education. We need platform like this a lot. We need to get occupier, we need to get user to attend educational platform like this to let them know that the importance of design for diversity. Everyone have different needs. We look at needs very, very differently. The Gen Z, it's the most difficult one to deal with, and probably the upcoming one, and we need to deal with it. And as a leader of the office also, I face this issue. And how I deal with it, it's probably started from giving them a better environment to work with. Like Seshan also mentioned about, as architect, as interior designer, the formula that we know you need like, not just putting another few plants in the office, but really to look at the formula, how to design for generation. How do I have the chairman, the CEO, the C-suite, the senior managers, the executive come together in one space and exchange? And we all need this. So I don't have an exact formula. It is an ongoing daily challenge for my studio. I would probably share with, I want everyone to come in probably to share this is ongoing challenge that we face every day. And I think, but knowing that it is important when we look at the vision of what our Deputy Premier have shared, the park especially, the vision having that value in place, designing for people, designing for longevity, designing for healthier, better life or work life for that matter. That probably the fundamental that we all as a studio stand. Yeah.
Can I add to that? Actually, I mean, although I do small scale projects, I do have a few larger ones. And I realized one trick to sell your idea to the client, or in the sense to make them, is to make them give them some ownership of the design. That means basically, so my trick for presidential clients is, I try to get the clients involved in the process. So that's why when the things are finally done, they feel like, wow, this is my idea, it's fine, give it to them. So I realized, when we talk about a home, so if you go a bit larger than a home, let's say like a workspace, if your users feel a connection to that space, and not just feel stuff, but they actually were involved in the design process. So let's come back to AI because when you do your research and all those things, and you finally come out of the building, you're actually getting the community involved, you're actually getting users involved, and then they kind of know that the end result actually had their input in it. So usually I realize when you do that, they're actually more accepting of the space, and the space, they take a bit more ownership of that space as well. I don't know whether that works or not. I try to find a common ground between all, from the boomer to the Gen Z, try to get them involved in a few things, and then you trick them into thinking that the idea was theirs. Maybe that might work.
Not so much for corporate world. I think I want to tap on a little bit on the AI. So recently I get to involved in quite a bit of AI-related programs, some from Singapore, some from UK. So very data generative driven. So a data that probably will tell, we will probably use this data to convince the boomer or the Gen X or the C-suite people that certain places are used more than others by how AI telling that spaces has been used or not, and how your how important A quality. People talk about MEP is like one side of the thing that's not important, but it is extremely important in our planning. The MEP is one key part of the whole thing. That is this cold enough? Are we comfortable? Are we too cold? Is it too bright? So who is telling this data to the client? So with the few AI tools that I've been speaking to, so there are a lot of advancing on these technologies that start to input and feel us. Certain space, oxygens are not enough. People are getting sleepy. So how do we inject that in? Certain space has been very hot. Hot is not in temperature, but then actively being using. And some room, some bosses' room are there for the sake of being there, but it never used in loss of property, like loss of investment. So all this, we need this data, a lot of education of this to the corporate world, to tell them, to educate them that you don't actually need these spaces, Yeah.
Actually, the easy way to convince your client is to ask your client to engage more architect to be their staff, like me. So it's easier. They help you to mitigate, they help you to convey the message to the senior management. So sometimes, I mean, I notice the sentiment, I'm being the hybrid here. So I put on the developer cap now. So I think I understand the sentiment here where, you guys experience a lot of these challenges to get things through. But of course, I think I agree with you guys that when the moment you put them into having this sense of ownership, I think that's very crucial. Especially, I think design being design, of course, as designer, you guys have to come up with design that is so diverse. At the same time, you need to have a lot of storytelling. I always think that a good designer is a good storyteller. You cannot, anyone can do design. Design A, design B, design C, basically they are same. But that thing that differentiates you guys from able to convince the client would be, the storytelling aspect. And of course, how you can get them to have this sense of ownership. That's very crucial, I think. I agree with you guys.
No,
As developer, I agree with you guys. Okay.
Thank you. Storytelling. So Nam being able to evoke the environment we envision, so that the client, you, the C-suite, whoever we're trying to the user group, sees the image that we want and they're inspired to want it with us.
Yes,
and then we're hired.
Correct. The other thing is, I think, of course, as architect or as developer, we actually create space for you guys as ID to finish it up. Of course, ID, normally you guys come in much later. So when you guys say you want to remove this beam, remove that beam, that's actually challenging. So that's why I think it's always good that if you have client that can actually have the ID being involved much earlier, so you don't have all these abortive works, of course. Abortive works is money lah. So I think of course, I think as a developer, we create space, we create opportunity for you guys as an ID to finish it off with your design.
Well, we all as designers.
Yes.
Because it doesn't matter whether you're trained in ID or architecture, it's making that environment take on a life that then gives us the ability, or our clients, the human beings using it, to feel like it's ours. Daniel, want to hear more from you. When we come back, we have, I think, about 25 minutes to address the reimagining. And what's hard about that is that I feel like understanding wellness in of itself is already a very big task. So to start thinking about reimagining it is much larger. And we're going to leave that to one of our biggest brains in the room, Daniel. You're going to start us off. Please. So maybe you'll think about, John has brought in AI, and we've talked about big data and vision, but vision really is, to reimagine requires vision. So maybe you can, while you have a grab a drink or whatever, you can think about some of that and get us started. Thank you.
Sure.